Hi. So my name is Paivand, and I'm going to speak to Smartsheet's recent transition to Snowflake and Databricks. Just to give you some background about myself, I started working at Smartsheet about 5 years ago. And when I started working at Smartsheet, Smartsheet had about 100 employees, and now we're up to over 1,000. So over my time at Smartsheet, I've been able to experience the rapid growth within the company, and it's been incredibly exciting. During my entire time at Smartsheet, I've been on the business intelligence team, which means that when we started talks about migrating to a new data platform, I was heavily involved in that conversation. And then when we finally decided to make that transition, I was part of the team that made that transition happen. So today, I want to speak to first, what is Smartsheet and why is data analytics important to us? How do Snowflake and Databricks help us achieve our purpose? And then lastly, the impact of Snowflake and Databricks through 2 use cases that we've identified so far. So first, what is Smartsheet and why is data analytics important? Smartsheet is a cloud-based work execution platform. It's a platform that's incredibly flexible and allows for many different use cases. At its baseline, Smartsheet allows teams, empowers teams to work more efficiently through easy-to-use and universally known assets like spreadsheets, calendars, and Gantt charts. Layered on top of that, customers can build robust solutions at scale by utilizing the different features and connectors that Smartsheet provides to its customers. As a company, we saw 52.2 million revenue in our last quarter. That's a 58% year-over-year growth, and we have over 78,000 customers. So every single day, tons of new people are building tons of new projects within Smartsheet all over the world. And with so many diverse capabilities, we see a wide variety of use cases and customers coming to use Smartsheet. But what that means is that we can't just rely on heuristics or our best guesses to understand how people are using our product and how to deliver the best solutions to our customers. So we have to look at the data. Thus, in Smartsheet, data analytics is not important, it's imperative. And there are 2 main types of analytics that we do at Smartsheet. The first is internal data analysis that we use to make informed decisions. So for example, on the business intelligence team, we work closely with product management and product marketing to be able to understand how people are utilizing different features, potential roadblocks within that feature, and how to determine feature prioritization and give better customer experiences. The second type of analysis that we do at Smartsheet is outbound data analysis. And the goal is to give a better targeted customer experience. So for example, we work with our marketing teams to be able to deliver relevant information to our customers. Another example is at Smartsheet, our sales teams heavily use the data and report that business intelligence creates for them. They like to know how their customers are using the product, what features they're using, and the reason why is that way they can have personalized experiences with their customers and be able to talk about their usage in comparison with their customers' goals for how they just wanted to start using Smartsheet. So all in all, analytics at Smartsheet allows us to achieve our purpose, which is to empower everyone to improve how they work. So next, let's get into Snowflake and Databricks. So how do Snowflake and Databricks help us achieve that purpose? Before diving into the migration specifically, I want to talk about our legacy platform. Our legacy platform was an on-prem MySQL-based platform. We'd been using it in Smartsheet for over 5 years. When I started working at Smartsheet, that was the platform I was using to query data, pull data, and do all of my analysis. And in the beginning years of Smartsheet, that platform was everything that we needed. It allowed us to do everything that was demanded of us as a business intelligence team. But as Smartsheet continued to grow, we realized that we were reaching the limits of this system. And so we started the discussions of, what if we migrate platforms? What do we require out of that migration? So we outlined the business requirement for Smartsheet's data platform. The first is performance. So when we talk about performance, we mean ingestion latency, so time between when someone completed an action and when we saw that in our database. Query performance, so how long does it take me to actually query the data available to us, and ETL. Total cost of ownership, so that's not only the total cost of ownership now, but if Smartsheet continues to grow at the capacity it's growing currently, which we're all hoping, how much is that going to cost ongoing? Supportability, security, again with data, security is incredibly important. Migration timeline, we don't want to be stuck in a case where we have to maintain 2 systems and be able to migrate reports from one to the other consistently. So migration timeline is incredibly important and key. And then lastly is functional fit. And I think functional fit is the most important, because even if we build out the coolest pipeline and the best data platform that uses the coolest technologies, if it doesn't fit the needs of me and other analysts at Smartsheet, it's just not going to be utilized, and it'll be utterly useless. So there was a lot of work done on the Smartsheet side to be able to satisfy all these requirements for our data platform. Next, I'll speak to why we made this transition in the first place. It's not a decision that we take lightly at all, because it requires a ton of manpower, a ton of work to be able to make sure that everything is consistent, and it's actually a seamless transition from your old platform to the new. So I'll speak to some of the factors that impacted me as an analyst at Smartsheet on a day-to-day basis. I'll also say that while at Smartsheet on our legacy platform, I also had a hand in taking care of our old infrastructure, so I'll speak to some of those points as well. So like I mentioned, our old platform was a legacy MySQL-based on-prem platform. And the first pain point that I want to speak to is scalability. So as Smartsheet continued to grow, the amount of data in our database was also growing accordingly. So on a day-to-day basis, we saw an exponential growth in the amount of data that was being populated in our database. And on our MySQL platform, there was no easy or fast way to be able to scale according to the amount of data that we were acquiring. So that means that we had to do capacity planning, buying storage that we weren't utilizing yet, and then sometimes our planning didn't go correctly, so we had to purge our data or store it somewhere else, which is, storage should never be an issue when it comes to data. Next, as our tables were becoming bigger and bigger, as analysts, we were finding it harder and harder to query the data that we had available to us. Some of the tables, honestly, just became so large that we literally avoided using them entirely. And I found proxies for the data available in those tables because I just didn't want to wait around for hours for a query to finish. In other cases, we found that we were spending a ton of time tuning queries, making sure we weren't locking other people's queries, essentially just spending time trying to extract the data rather than actually doing the analysis that we wanted to do. And then lastly, I want to speak to is elasticity. So again, Smartsheet's growing, the business intelligence team is growing, we're building more reports, automated processes, more people are querying our data. In our old platform, there was no way for us to scale up or down based on the workload that we were putting on our system. We had a set amount of workload, and it didn't really matter who was utilizing the system, that was just all we had. So we had to work around our scheduled processes, we had to work around each other, make sure we weren't interfering with each other's work. And again, just more time trying to figure out how to get the data rather than actually doing the analysis at hand. So then enter Snowflake. Just as a brief overview of what Snowflake is a cloud-built data warehouse provided as software as a service. The architecture comes in 3 layers. It's data storage, query processing, and cloud services. So when we think about why we moved to Snowflake, I want to go back to our pain points and how Snowflake helped solve it, and why we moved to that as our data platform. So when we think about scalability, the data in Snowflake is stored in S3. So it's really easy for us to acquire more storage. We're only paying for what we're utilizing, and theoretically, storage is then infinite for us, theoretically. When we think about elasticity, so the ability to scale up and down based on the demand that we're putting on our system, Snowflake uses warehouses or clusters. that you can spin up and add more nodes for the amount of workload or the amount of people that are utilizing the system, and then in minutes, again, scale back down if needed. Additionally, you can spin up multiple clusters or warehouses for multiple teams so that we're not all fighting for the same resources, but we can have dedicated resources for different teams. And in that same vein, those tables that we couldn't query before because they were too big, we finally had the opportunity to be able to use the data within them, not rely on proxies, and actually build enrichments and ETL processes on top of them. So we finally felt as a BI team that we were utilizing all the data available to us rather than trying to cut corners and find other ways to get the data available. So we decided on Snowflake. Oh, I want to touch on one other point, which for me as an analyst was fun for me. So in our old system, I had a report that ran, and over the years, the queries just took longer and longer to run that I just stopped running it. So in our POC with Snowflake, I decided to take one of those queries and run it in our old platform and run it in Snowflake. In our old platform, it ran for an hour and a half, and then I killed it because I just don't have patience. And then when I ran it in Snowflake, it only took 20 minutes. And that right there was a key indication that Snowflake was able to scale with us with the amount of data that we have and the amount of data we want to query. So the following it's an overly simplified transition plan. Obviously, it's not as easy as 5 steps, but if we boil it down, the first was build a data pipeline to S3. We had fortunately already done this work before we decided on Snowflake, so that had already been completed. The next is migrate our code and reports. So we were on a MySQL-based platform, so we had to migrate all of our code to ANSI SQL. And then similarly, all of our jobs used to run in Jenkins, so we migrated them to Airflow. And then lastly, we wanted to point our Tableau reports to our new data source. After all of that migration was completed, we then did validation. And validation, honestly, is what took the most amount of time. We wanted to validate all of our data was correct, all of our reports were correct, all of our code was correct, and we were comparing apples to apples within our 2 systems. Lastly, we wanted to run these platforms in parallel. So we make sure that any immediate bugs or things that need to be fixed were resolved. And then we flipped to our new platform. The last note I want to touch on is that the other hardest part about this transition is that we were running 2 systems in parallel. And so it was kind of like catching a moving train, and that part was difficult. But with the help of the BI team and the BDP team, we were able to eventually catch up and migrate over. So next, again, overly simplified view of our current architecture. We have data flowing in from our application, as well as other sources such as Marketo and Salesforce, and that all goes into Snowflake. And then once in Snowflake, that's where we do all of our data wrangling, querying, ETL work. If more advanced analytics is required, that's when we push it up into Databricks, where we can utilize the different languages and packages and functions. Finally, once we do all the analysis we want to do, we spit it out into either CSV format or Tableau, which is our primary reporting structure. So Snowflake and Databricks together provide us the ability to do advanced analytics while maintaining the structure and integrity of our data. So far, I want to highlight some of the key benefits that we at Smartsheet have experienced by being able to utilize these two platforms. So when we look at Snowflake, Snowflake's platform ensures data security and integrity. When we think about query speed and being able to query large data sets, that's obviously a huge plus for us on the business intelligence team. Conditional permissions, so we're actually able to start allowing access to other people in the company, access to our platform, because we can give them permissions based on who they are and what data they should have available to them, which allows us to be able to start looking towards a self-service model. The creation of views and being able to copy DBs. I didn't actually think that would be such a big benefit, but as we were building out Snowflake, and even till this day, being able to copy an entire database without the double cost of storage, and then being able to run processes and test new ingestion pipelines or infrastructure against that has been really valuable. It's allowed us to make sure that what we're implementing is what we expect, and then push that into production without affecting our production data. undrop tables, fortunately not needed that, but as an analyst, it's really nice to be able to have that in our back pocket just in case. Departmental usage with monitoring, again, allows us to be able to give access to other departments to query their own data. And then lastly, the connection to Tableau, which is our primary data source. So now, in our legacy platform, we didn't want anything connecting to that database, so we would export CSVs and then connect those the Tableau reports to those CSVs. Right now, we can do a direct connect Snowflake to Tableau. And then we layer on top of that Databricks, which provides a ton of flexibility in terms of what kind of analytics that we can do. We can utilize the different languages and packages, schedule jobs, so I'm able to create reports and then have them run on an ongoing basis without writing any code at all, which is really nice as an analyst. There's easy visualizations, so sometimes I don't need the robust tool of a Tableau, but just want to create a bar chart or a line graph, and so being able to just do that right in the notebook is really nice. Intuitive UI and UX. There are other teams within Smartsheet that utilize Databricks, and I've never given people access to a product and gotten so few questions about how to use it. Share notebooks. Again, really helpful on the BI team. We share notebooks across each other to look at code, to collaborate on code, and be able to debug code. And looking at the same source is incredibly helpful. Versioning and Git, always a plus. And then lastly, allow self-service via run permissions. So I added that at the end because I've utilized that a lot in my work. I'll create reports for people in the company. Sometimes they don't necessarily need it to run every day or every week, but just when they need it. So I give them the permission to just click run whenever they need updated data. And then they don't have to interact with me at all. I'm able to focus on new sets of analysis rather than going back and having to refresh reports for people and analysis I've already done. So it saves business intelligence people time and also end users time for being able to just get up-to-date data with a click of a button. So now a few use cases in Impact. Again, we're early with our use of Snowflake and Databricks, so these are just ones that have come up so far. The first I want to speak to is anomaly detection. So in our legacy system, if we wanted to look at any of our telemetry data, it was virtually impossible. The tables in which that data was stored were massive, and it required hours to query against it. And when you need to know an answer now, that just wasn't time that we were willing to spend. So we had to rely on other applications. Also, if you want to marry two different types of data together, sometimes that required multiple steps of analysis and potentially different applications. So it's just not scalable when you want immediate look at our data. However, in Snowflake, we're able to query hundreds of millions of rows of telemetry data and filter down by the relevant events that we care about within minutes. It can be faster if you really want to up the compute cluster as well. And because we're using our actual data platform, we can join in other pieces of data that our platform has available to us to add more color to that telemetry data, which ultimately gives us more insight into the data that we're looking at. Once that data set's created, we can push it up into Databricks, where we can create pivots and aggregations and visualizations on top of that data. And then finally, distribute that data amongst all the relevant parties so they have a single source of truth of the data and are all able to make decisions together. So the impact has been results and insights are derived quickly because you're not using multiple applications and you're able to scale up your clusters based on your need. Easy and fast distribution of data through sharing notebooks, and then increase our speed to action if action needs to be taken. The reason why I brought up this use case specifically is because I know it's not fancy analytics or anything special, but what makes it special for us at Smartsheet is it's actually a use case not used by the business intelligence team, but by other departments within Smartsheet. So it's showing that we're able, with these two platforms, people are able to self-serve their own data, and therefore BI is no longer a blocker for them to be able to make data-driven decisions quickly. So for me personally, it's been really exciting to be able to see people pull their own data and derive fast analysis, and then they'll come to BI for anything more advanced that they need. And then therefore, BI can spend their time on other types of analysis rather than just pulling data and putting together quick visualizations. the next use case I want to speak to is text analytics of unstructured customer comments. Sorry. This was a project that was worked on by somebody else in my team. So it actually started in our old legacy platform. The goal of the project was we have all of this unstructured comments and some email data, and we want to be able to categorize them logically. Previously, sales reps were doing so, but obviously with manually entered data, there were typos, discrepancies, and biases. So we wanted to find an automated way to be able to categorize all of them. So in our old system, the member on my team, she had to create the data set and export it into a CSV, and then upload it into R. However, that step alone required a ton of work on her part. Because we're looking at unstructured data, there were special characters, new line characters, and so other data points that made it difficult for her to create a data in a format to put it into R. So she ended up spending a lot of time just cleaning the data before being able to do her analysis. However, with Snowflake and Databricks, Snowflake has the ability to deal with this kind of unstructured data easily. And because we don't have to export a CSV, she could add other data points on top of it and not worry about the size of the table that she has to then export into a file. After she creates her table, she can push it up into Databricks. And again, Databricks has the ability to deal with this kind of unstructured data. And because she's using Snowflake and Databricks, she's not relying on the compute of her computer or a virtual machine, but can increase and decrease size of the cluster based on the amount of data that she's processing and the analysis that she wants to do. So ultimately, she pushed this data up into Databricks, and within Databricks can do all the data cleansing that she needs, do her NLP analysis, and then derive the categories for those comments. In addition, because she's able to add more pieces of data on top of those comments, she was able to do more insights and patterns across that data. Finally, at the end, when she categorized her data, she's able to push it back down into Snowflake and then surface that data into Tableau for all of her sales reps. So the impact of this on our team was time saving and human effort. She did it twice in our old platform, and she kind of was like, this is just a waste of my time to spend so much time cleaning my data, whereas it's not an issue in our new platform. The consistency and categorization, so finally we're able to operationalize something like this, and so we don't have the issue of sales reps putting in different kinds of categories. And then lastly, the ability to pull out patterns to derive insights. So again, because we're able to just utilize Snowflake and Databricks, there's no need to export data. We can layer as much data as we want on top of it to be able to identify other types of patterns and marry comments, for example, with usage data, or where they are in the country, or who they're collaborating with. So all in all, the combination of Snowflake and Databricks has not only allowed us to finally keep up with the growing scale of our company, but finally get ahead as a business intelligence team. Thank you.
We still have some time for questions if you're okay, and if you would like to ask a question, please come over to the mic.
Hi. I was curious to know if, did you use Databricks for the advanced analytics, or did you also use it to load the data into the Snowflake data warehouse?
Yeah, we don't use Databricks to load the data. It's just for advanced analytics. But we're able to push data back right to Snowflake from Databricks if we do any analytics on top of it.
Okay, and what was the technology you used to load into the data warehouse, the Snowflake data warehouse?
So we have a job within Airflow that takes data within S3 and then loads it into the warehouse.
Thank you.
Hi. Could you please also touch upon your ETL strategy? So do you follow like a ETL approach, or you essentially do an ELT approach within Snowflake? And where does Spark come into the picture there from a data processing standpoint, not just from advanced analytics?
Sorry, I couldn't understand your first question.
So essentially, how do you do your ETL for for your data processing for Snowflake? If you can touch upon that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we again utilize Airflow to schedule our jobs, and our scripts are actually just run on top of Snowflake. So it's just SQL scripts that are run using Snowflake data, and we just use Airflow to schedule them on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. In your previous slide, you have showed that 3 billion records processed in 1.5 hours. You had to kill it, and you rerun in Snowflake. It took 20 minutes.
Sorry.
Right? Also, in your previous slide, you showed that 3 billion records processed in 20 minutes in Snowflake.
It was something like 700 million-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So may I know like how many nodes you've been running on that? How many nodes it is running on in the Snowflake?
I honestly don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
I know we tested it using the different kind of cluster sizes that are available to us. And I think in the end, we used an 8-node cluster.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, just for my calculations, like. And the other question is, when you connect the Tableau for the Tableau reporting, what kind of connection modes you use? You will use live or extract mode?
We use extracts.
Extracts.
Right now, primarily extracts, just so that we don't incur the cost of consistently pinging our warehouse. So we use extracts and then just have scheduled extract refreshes on top of our reports.
Okay, so basically, you just replace your database with the Snowflake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Could you speak about how long that transition took place between MySQL and getting over to Snowflake?
Yeah. So again, because we already had the pipeline built, that's not going to be included in the time frame I'm thinking of. I think that took months. I want to say 4 to 5 months. But when we started migrating all of our stuff, that took 8 months for us to migrate over. And the bulk of the work was not actually the SQL migration or the report migration. It was just doing validation and catching up to our current platform is what took the bulk of our time. So I think those two together took about, I want to say 5 of the 8 months.
What's the data volume? When you migrate to
Many terabytes. I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say like at least 20 terabytes of data, but it's just a wild guess right now.
So is that just history, or what amount of data you actually ingest daily?
Oh, that I don't know off the top of my head, I'm sorry. With some of our tables, I know it's at least 50 million rows for one table. So let's say like 100 million rows per day on average. It's a wild guess.
Dashboards based on Databricks. How friendly, how would that work?
Sorry?
Can you explain a little bit the details of the Databricks dashboards distributed as part of the first use case?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically that process looks like someone brings in the data into Databricks and then plays around with it and creates pivot tables and just quick graphs. And then within Databricks, you're able to just create dashboards right there and select the cells that you want to bring up into your dashboard, and then have some text outlining what you're looking at and share that out. So altogether, I mean, it's easy to create a dashboard within 5 minutes total and be able to share that out with people. And creating graphs is incredibly easy within Databricks. With a click of a button, you can have a graph to look at your data.
When users look at the dashboard, they need to be authenticated.
They do need to be authenticated, yeah.
How many resources did you use to execute your transition plan?
So we had hired contractors to help us migrate our code. So I want to say we had 3 or 4 people help us do that, and then the rest of it was in-house, and it was a team of 7 data engineers with the help of the business intelligence team. Yeah.
How long did it take for the whole validation?
The validation, it took about 5 months. But it was validation on top of catching up with the current workload that business intelligence was putting out, because we couldn't stop what we were doing So we had to keep providing value in data to the company. So it was just being able to ramp down as much as we could on that part while ramping up the validation on Snowflake. Reports, over 1,000 Tableau reports. And then SQL code, like 50,000 lines of SQL code that we migrated over. Yeah.
What percentage of that 50,000 lines of SQL code actually had to be modified? Didn't go
Most of it. So even things like the biggest transition was like how you use date format in MySQL. You have to use a different ANSI SQL. So it was simple changes like that, but you did have to go through all 50,000 lines of code. Or for example, if you do a date diff, the order is different in ANSI SQL than MySQL, so even something like that requires a code change.
All right, everyone. Let's give Paivand a big hand.